And unmuting ourselves, or is someone else doing that?
I will leave it unmuted.
Just leave it unmuted and just
be quiet.
Raise. Yeah.
All right,
I'm trying to get out of that Microsoft Team mindset.
There may or may not be an NBA player on right now, waiting.
That's a word.
All right, guys.
Let's do it. All right, and Courtney, you can go ahead and keep letting folk in once they are verified.
Got you. We good?
We are good. We are indeed live on YouTube.
And I'm
NBA player on right now, waiting.
That's a word.
All right, guys.
Do it. All right, there we go. We are indeed live on YouTube now, so I'm getting some feedback, but we are set. First, let me find the screen again. Good evening, everyone. My name is Darren Lee Calhoun II. I run the facilities, public programming, and outreach here at the Avery Research Center for African American History and Culture at the College of Charleston. I appreciate everyone for showing up for tonight's event. I know we have many more people coming and going. If you do miss this event or any of our other events, you can go on our YouTube page for the Avery Digital Classroom and find any of our events. As of right now, we have events going back to 2015 that you can go learn from and get back to us, tell us what you want us to put on. But again, I'm excited to have this special panel going on tonight, looking at disparities in the game of women's basketball. This is co-hosted by the College of Charleston Athletics Department. And we are just looking forward to everyone coming back down to Charleston and join some of our women's basketball games. I used to be courtside seats before the pandemic, and I will be back at my courtside seats as soon as we're back. So again, thank you. As of right now, the Avery is still closed to the public. We will see what's going on post pandemic, but we will not open back up until it is safe for our community to be in there at once. As you know, I like nice things. So once we do that, we will have a party. Trust me, it's going to be a great party. I need everybody coming from Florida, from New Jersey, and Atlanta, everybody over to come see the type of parties that we throw at the Avery. So again, thank you for coming out. We will, if you need anything, go ahead and send us a message over to Avery Programs. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Mike Ward to give the occasion and welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Calhoun. And on behalf of the entire CFC athletic staff, I want to say thank you for having us and including us in this program. It's been less than a year since the College of Charleston founded their Inclusion, Equity, and Diversity Action Council. Jamal Walton, the Associate Athletic Director of External Operations at the College of Charleston, the chair of this Action Council, started their first meeting back in July of this year, or excuse me, of last year. And they've really gotten a lot accomplished within less than a calendar year, doing things like having Black History Month reading for Meminger Elementary School, where staff, coaches, players read virtually to students at the elementary school. They also did a school supply drive that athletes, teams, each individual team got together and got supplies together and hand delivered those, obviously socially distanced to those schools, Meminger Elementary School being the prime recipient of that. And one thing that really stands out that Jamal and with this panel we wanted to talk about was My Story Matters. It featured the women's basketball team. There's a short 60-second video on cfcsports.com if you go to the YouTube page, where you can see the Meminger Elementary stories as well as this My Story Matters. The women's basketball team shot a quick, like I said, 1-minute video in response to the social injustices that have been happening throughout America, especially within the last calendar year and even going further back. That video is also going to be part of the NCAA's social media diversity and inclusion program. So that video, along with videos from other universities and institutions, will be on the NCAA's webpage and throughout marketing, things like that, as they progress with what they're doing. really, the mission statement for the IEDAC is very short and sweet, but it sums up what we at the college are trying to do. It's, we're forming this to focus on ensuring a strong commitment to celebrate diversity while always striving for inclusion and equity. And that's really what Jamal, co-chair Kate Tiller, who is the Assistant Athletic Director for the Student Athlete Academic Services, or SAC as we call it on campus. They, along with the Office of Institutional Diversity and Multicultural Student Programs and Services, and obviously what we're doing here with the Avery Institute, all partners within the College of Charleston system, as well as reaching out to the city of Charleston, the county of Charleston, and just the Charleston community as a whole. Also have Derek Davis, the Director of Development. He's part of the Cougar Fund annual fund. Randy Schneider, the Women's Basketball Associate Head Coach, is a founding member, as is Shauna Caldwell, a Women's Soccer Assistant Coach. Those 5 are the staff coaching members that we have right now. They've laid a really great foundation. There's a lot upcoming. They're working on getting a web page together to where you go to cfc.com, you would click on a link and it would take you to what's upcoming. But right now, if you go to cfcsports.com, you can look up Jamal Walton's email. If you have any questions, you can email him directly. You can also go to the YouTube page link that is there and click on and see some sports highlights, but as well as some video clips done by the video department of some of the things that the IEDAC have been up to. And again, we're really excited to be a part of this. I see a lot of current players, former players, one in the Zoom meeting right here. And we're really excited. I can't say enough how excited we are about it. We've been helping put this together and it's just been great. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our moderator, Miss Quand Robinson-Thomas. Tell you a little bit about her. She's just an award-winning producer for NBA TV. That's all, no big deal. She creates compelling content, produces features for programming, including Beyond the Paint, Open Court, and Game Time. Over the past year, she's produced groundbreaking shows for NBA TV, including WNBA Weekly, Work From Home, and one of my favorite weekly segments, Chuck's Guarantees with NBA legend Charles Barkley. Quand has worked on NBA TV's coverage for marquee live events such as All-Star Weekend, Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame Ceremony, NBA Draft, and more. She also oversees the production and highlights for broadcast and .com. But she's not just a sports person, ladies and gentlemen. Quand is a proud Atlantean, spent time on the actual news side, not the sports side of news, but the actual news side, working on the 2008 presidential election, including the presidential and vice presidential debates moderated by Jim Lear and the late Gwen Ifill. Spent some time in Kentucky as a producer for WLKY, a CBS affiliate in Louisville, and joined the CNN team as a producer for News Source, and later became associate producer for CNN Sports, where she supported news gathering and production. She's also produced packages for television and digital, Bleacher Report branded live segments, sponsored content, and live event coverage. And I could go on, but that's the highlight for Miss Quand, and I will let her take it away and introduce this fabulous panel that we have this evening.
Thank you. Thank you. I probably should have told you that you didn't need to read all of that. Just a simple introduction.
Oh, I wanted to, because when you do all of this, you get credit for it. Okay. There's
Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. A simple introduction is always fine for me. I am more than happy to be a part of this panel tonight. We've got such an amazing panel here today. And so I just want to go ahead and give everyone else their roses, like Mike just did for me. So I'm going to start with Special Jennings. Special Jennings is the head girls basketball coach at Montverde Academy, the 2020-2021 season was Jennings' inaugural year as head coach, which was filled with many accomplishments. Coach Jennings led the Lady Eagles to a 21-2 record while being ranked #1 in the country for 13 weeks, a record that her teams broke 13 times during the regular season. Jennings is clearly no stranger to winning. She started at 115 consecutive games at Xavier University, where she's currently tied for 4th place in all-time assists for the Musketeers with 515 assists. She still holds the 5th place spot in Xavier's all-time free throw percentage at 77%. Jennings led the Musketeers to an Elite 8 appearance in 2010, 4 Atlantic 10 Conference tournament titles, and 3 other NCAA tournament appearances. So welcome, Special Jennings.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the panel, we have Miss Roberta Williams, who is by all means a legend. She's considered talented and disciplined at the shooting guard position. Roberta Williams led the South Carolina State College Lady Bulldogs to an Association of Intercollegiate Athletics for Women national championship runner-up finish in 1978. In 1979, Roberta led her team to become the national champions and was named the most valuable player. Williams, a 2-time All-American at SCSU, is Lady Bulldogs' all-time leading scorer, having scored over 22,000 points. Her accomplishments led to her 1980 second-round draft pick by the San Francisco Pioneers of the Women's Basketball League, which was the first professional women's basketball league in the United States. And although the league only lasted 3 seasons, it gave rise to others that came after, such as the ABL and the current WNBA. Williams was inducted into the South Carolina State University Athletic Hall of Fame in 1998, and she was recognized as a member of the AIAW National Championship team by the prestigious Hall of Fame in 2000. And Williams is also in the MEAC Hall of Fame. She is the only South Carolina State University basketball player, male or female, to have her jersey, number 11, retired. She will be inducted into the South Carolina Athletics Hall of Fame, making this her 5th Hall of Fame induction. So welcome, Miss Roberta Williams. And then we also have Nola Henry. Nola Henry was born and raised in Willingboro, New Jersey. Nola served as a captain for the University of Massachusetts women's basketball team for 2 years before transferring to the College of Charleston. At CLC, Nola was again named captain of her women's basketball team for 3 years. Henry graduated from CLC in 2017 with a BA in sociology and a minor in crime, law, and society. In 2018, Henry became an assistant coach at Fairleigh Dickinson. She then further pursued her studies at University of Hartford, where Henry was a graduate assistant and video coordinator there, and recently graduated with a Master of Science degree in organizational psychology. Henry is currently an intern and member of the support staff for the WNBA team, Connecticut Sun. So welcome, Ms. Nola Henry.
Wow.
So thank you all for coming and joining us for this panel, She Got Game. Obviously, the topic of the panel is the disparity in women's basketball. And, before I get into the questions, I just kind of want to paint a picture for everyone so that they can understand the disparities. I know the disparities came front and center this last NCAA tournament when everyone was in the bubble and we saw the difference in the facilities that the women's basketball teams had versus the men's basketball teams, even down to the type of COVID-19 tests that both teams received. The disparity was large. When you look further into the scenario, the disparity grows even more. So if you look at the top final four coaches for this year's tournament, for the men's coaches, they on average make $1 million more than the women's coaches. This year's men's final four coaches make about $3 million in salaries on average, whereas the women coaches have an average salary of $1.6 million. Also, if you go even higher to the NBA and the WNBA level, you'll see the disparity in the salaries again. The average NBA salary is $7.7 million, whereas the average WNBA salary is $75,000. Not millions, $75,000. Then you look at the average revenue that you see across the leagues. WNBA has 12 teams and 144 players. Their annual revenue is $63 million. 17% of that revenue goes to the players. In the NBA, they have 30 teams and 450 players, an annual revenue of $8.8 billion. 39% of that goes to the players. And then you brought it out to viewership. Over the last 4 seasons on NBA TV has aired 2.5 times more NBA games than WNBA games, and the average viewership is increased by 81%. If you average out the top 4 top to watch NBA regular season games and base it towards the WNBA top regular season games, the viewership is dwarfed by 500%. And so I say all of these facts to just kind of paint a picture that the disparities within women's basketball, it spans across many avenues. It's not just the facilities, it's not just the coaches, it's not just salaries, it's also viewership. And you guys have all played in women's basketball throughout your entire careers. And so I want to hear firsthand from you how you've seen the different disparities play out within your field. And I'll start with you, Special, because you did lead your team to the Elite Eight. And so you know firsthand what it is to actually make it to the NCAA tournament, and you see the disparities. So tell us a little bit about what you saw.
I think it's a little bit about, kind of what's continued to happen. I know that, we can look at the NCAA gifts, for an example. I use that for an example. That's the first thing that come to mind is the gifts. We made it to an Elite Eight. I believe we had the flip, it was like the era of the flip little DVD player, portable DVD player, as opposed to the guys that was getting like game systems and mini like TVs. So it's always been a little lopsided. When I played at Xavier, we were top 3 in the country. And, even being top 3 in the country, we still didn't get as much airtime as our boys, who are also very good. Xavier men, that we had made it to the Elite Eight the same year. And, they had twice as many games live than what we did. And so it's almost like a never ending cycle that's continued to happen. Moving forward to what happened this year, which is something as simple as the weight rooms. So I see it often. I'm fortunate enough to be at Montverde Academy where across the board, I don't feel any different. I'm not getting any less than what the men are getting. And obviously the boys have done a great job here at Montverde. They've been national champions. They just won a national championship this month or last month. But across the board at Montverde, it's like an even playing field. But as far as college, it is what it is. I mean, Dawn Staley is, to me, one of the greatest coaches out there, and I can be being biased, but even for me playing against her when she was at Temple, when I was at Xavier, Dawn Staley was at Temple, and so I always say, if you take her resume and you take her name off the top, and you put it next to a male's resume, what is the difference? She's worked USA basketball. She's an Olympic gold medalist. She's worked with WNBA stars. She was a WNBA star. She's won a national championship. What is the difference? You see what I mean? So it's been this cycle, and man, it needs to change.
Yeah, 100%. Nola, let me bring you into this. You specifically played at the College of Charleston. What disparities did you see specifically between the women's team and the men's team while you were there?
Yeah, so I'll say for the College of Charleston specifically, I guess the most notable difference would be just the fan engagement and support. So you start the season, both teams are based on record are 0-0. Yet you'll hear fans or just other people say that the reason why women's side doesn't get as many fans is just because of the record. But it's like you start the season off 0-0. So I would say that for the men's games, the fans were like eager to sell out the stadium. For women's, we could barely get 10 people to come to the game, students included. So I would say that. And then just probably like the living conditions. Not that the living conditions are bad at all. It was just the men got to choose whether they would live at kind of like off in an off-campus apartment, even though it's on campus, and we kind of had to stay in the dorms on campus. We didn't get that option. So I would say those two were the two like most noteworthy differences between the men's and women's team.
And Roberta, tell us a little bit about the challenges that you faced in terms of gender inequality within the sport. You know, you, as I mentioned in your bio, you were, you know, probably one of the most successful basketball players at South Carolina State University. Tell us about those inequalities that you experienced throughout your basketball career.
You know, I appreciate the young ladies that view their opinion of the disparities. And I'm really like, I'm struck because I played over 40 years ago and we're still here, you know, we're still here. But, you know, I experienced the same as far as the disparity between the men and the women's basketball. Unlike fans, we filled the gym because of the our record and the talented players that I played against. I played on a really exciting team, but we were in a historically Black college. We played amongst a lot of Division I's that we competed in. We were basically rated number one, between number 1 and number 3 in the state. The men, you know, when it's time for us to play, like I said, the gym is full. It's standing room only because that's how exciting the players were. But when it came down to uniforms and warm-ups, it's like we were a second-class citizen. We got the leftovers, and they would have 3 and 4, you know, away warm-ups and home warm-ups and jerseys and sneakers when they're like, we got 1 pair of sneakers, you know, and we practiced in that sneaker and we played in those sneakers. We won the national championship in 1979. However, if you walk in the gym now, there is no picture of the national championship women's players. There is no picture of Roberta, who was the MVP of the national tournament now. And they do have my jersey in the Rapture, but it's no picture in the gym stating that that's my jersey. You know, we have students to say that, oh, I thought that was a guy's jersey, you know, when there is no recognition of none of the major history that we have accomplished at South Carolina State. And like the young lady said, with comparing with Don Staley, if that was the men team that won the nationals and had an MVP or had a jersey, it would have been known, you know. So it's so lopsided, and I'm really amazed that I'm sitting here today and you guys are still sharing, you know, the disparities between the men and the women's basketball team. You know, it's really kind of it's unsettling. It's unsettling, and then it's across the board. Yeah, so I experienced the same, but I thought it would be different. But it is, you know, it is a challenge. You know, it is a challenge, and I think this conversation is much needed.
Yeah. So one thing that I think you all touched on was just the difference in support that the women's basketball team receives in comparison to the men's basketball team. And that translates into fans and viewership and excitement. I'll go back to you, Special. Why do you think that there's less support for women's basketball team, especially on the college level? Because if the fans are going out for men's games, then they can go out for women's games as well. So why do you think there's such a disparity there?
I think there's a disparity in marketing. There's a disparity in advertising. There's a disparity, you know, on campus. When I'm honest, when you're on campuses, And I can say this even, I can use, one of the former colleges I was at when I was coaching on a college level. There's posters of the men's basketball schedule, not only on campus, but in the restaurants that's affiliated with campus. In the student center, there's posters, there are different things, there's different ways of knowing about the games. And so I think just the promotion of women's basketball is part of the problem. And it's sad because when I played, our games was packed. I mean, we had the people in there. We had, our crowd was there. The city was behind us. Like I stated, we were top 3 in the country. But there still was a difference. You could tell. So just the promotion, the marketing is just totally different. I feel like people they don't invest as much in the marketing for women as they do for men.
And what about you, Nola? I know that you just recently joined with the Connecticut Sun for the WNBA. In your limited time with them so far, what are the discrepancies that you're starting to see between how women's basketball on the WNBA level is handled?
I would just say, I think it's like a overarching problem that's rooted in just women and how we have been treated in society throughout history. I think there's disparities in any industry with men and women. When you compare men and women across any industry, you're going to kind of get the same result. And it's just, so I think that's just the overarching problem. And it's been a problem since the beginning of time. I think the way that we change it is to continue to try to bring awareness to it. Special key word there was, I would just say invest, educate, and things like that. That's how you grow the game. But I would say the most important thing is just investing in it. And I know over time it can become draining, but just like the people before us that, fought hard to get to where we're at today, we have to do that same thing and continue to fight to grow the game.
Roberta, there are a couple of students on here who, are Black student athletes who go to a predominantly white institution. When it comes to inclusion programs, what can the NCAA or even the school do to promote more unity and more understanding to really foster the relationship with those students?
Are we coming from the athletic point of view as far
Yes.
as diversity?
Mm-hmm.
I think that it should bring more awareness to the culture for both, to understand each other. I think there should be more diversity committees, more involvement from the communities, and just, kind of understand and explain each other's cultural background, especially going to a predominantly white institute. I went to an HBCU, college. My high school was predominantly Black, elementary school was predominantly Black. But when I went to the next level of playing professional basketball, I think what brought us together, we had in common was the love and the passion of the game, the sport itself. And that brought on a real rich sisterhood, and, when people say, we don't see colors, I can tell you in the game of athletics and sports, it's really kind of, you don't see it. What you truly see is the love of the game and the passion of the game. And I think that if we come from that aspect of wanting to be a part of a team, wanting to be a part of the same, have the same interests, I think it won't be as difficult as far as trying to come together and understanding each other's culture,
I understood. Ms. Roberta, while I still have you, let me ask you about your involvement with the women's basketball league and starting that league. When we talk about the pay disparity between men and women's basketball, I'm sure that was a topic of conversation as that league was being developed, and you were a participant in it. What do you think overall about the pay discrepancy between men and women's basketball, and how things were when you were in your professional league versus how they are now? We can see that the pay gap is still monumental. What are your thoughts surrounding that?
Who was the question for?
Yes, so the question is in regards to when you played professional basketball with the Women's Basketball League, there was a pay discrepancy there. And now the pay discrepancy continues as we are looking in between the WNBA and the NBA. So I'm asking what your thoughts are about that pay discrepancy between between men and women in the league.
So that's directed to me? Oh, okay.
Yes,
I wasn't sure. Ms. Kwan, when I got drafted and went into the WBL, we are known now as trailblazers. Each of us, it was at that time, because we know that we were breaking glass ceilings, and we basically just wanted to make history. We wanted to prove that they can be a professional basketball women's team in the United States. That was our first, that's what we wanted to happen. We made a lot of sacrifices. See, when you talk about money, money wasn't really an issue there. Because if I tell you some of the contracts, we had young ladies on some teams that it was so hard for that team to survive financially. They were actually losing their apartments, and they all were living together, They couldn't afford to pay their rent because they weren't getting paid, but they did not leave. I know you mentioned that you have jobs. No, they had teams that weren't able to travel to play other teams. Now, the team that I played for, we were financially stable. We could have traveled. We had a pretty good fan base, but there were 12 teams in the league. 3 of the teams were really financially stable, but it takes more than 3 teams to make a league. So some of the ladies were sacrificing. They sacrificed a lot. I think the highest contract may have been $14,000. My contract was something like $4,000. That's for the season. Now, when Nancy Lieberman came, Nancy Lieberman had a totally different contract because Nancy Lieberman was the face of the franchise. We needed her, so we accepted the fact that she would be the face so that she can kind of make the league stable enough to see if the other teams will be able to survive financially. And unfortunately, Nancy Lieberman's, her contract was $100,000, but she was the only one making that, because they could not afford to pay the players because we were just starting out trying to make a point that, hey, women's basketball can survive here in the United States. Our women shouldn't have to go overseas to play. And unfortunately, we had a season, we completed the season when I got there, we completed that season, but unfortunately, the other 8 teams defunct, We had investors. Matter of fact, the team that I played in, we had 2 actors. We had Alan Alda was one of our investors. We had Mike Connors, who played in Mannix. I don't know if you guys remember that series. And then we had this guy that was the owner of Bear Stearns, a financial investment. So we had investors, and I'm not sure how the WNBA was ran, but we had people who invested into the teams. And unfortunately, the league, defunct because of financial reason. But we break glass ceilings, and we wanted to pass it off to the WNBA, but it was a big gap before the WNBA came in, And like the young lady said, Ms. Henry said, it's just like embedded in the mentality of men, as far as women is like second-class citizen. Remember now, we weren't even a part of athletics until Title IX came out. And when Title IX came out, that's when they said, oh, women could be, involved in athletic at universities. But they didn't know how the talent of the women would have just, exploded to a level of competition. See, I don't think they had put that in the equation. So, unfortunately, we did pass it, but I didn't know it would take this long. And I didn't think it would still be a disparity when it came to payment. Yeah, that's a disappointment.
Yeah. Special, you have the next generation of basketball players right in your palm as a head coach from Montverde. What are you telling your students? What are you telling your student athletes about preparing to go into D1 schools and preparing to go into hopefully the WNBA and starting their career? How are you preparing them for that part of their journey?
The first thing is obviously just image. How the sad part is perspective is most people's reality. And so just our image and how you carry yourself on a daily basis. I think that's, people are attracted to how someone carries themselves. I have a couple young ladies that I think are, that are phenomenal ball players who are going to play at, high major colleges and who will continue to play professionally. And I think that, they just have to take everything in. Look at watch the WNBA. Watch how those women carry themselves. And this year was like by far one of my proudest moments. Some of my current friends, still currently play in the WNBA. And just with everything that went on, shedding light on the disparities in the league, shedding light on, all of the mistreatment of Black people. They carry themselves very well. And the first thing people try to look at is, it's full of ghetto and this and that. As a woman, that's just the perception. And I've gotten that. I'm Black. I like colored hair. I have tattoos. And so not knowing me, people would judge you.
Yes.
And it's sad, but that's just the reality we live in. And so I just try to tell my young ladies, we carry ourselves the right way. You hold your head high when you walk into a room, you speak. A lot of times it's people nowadays, I don't know if they're not getting the lesson at home, but people walk into a room full of business people or just people in general and not say, good morning, good afternoon, how you doing? That's one-on-one. So just etiquette. I think that etiquette is definitely, and just how they carry themselves, that's going to take them far.
Yeah. So Special brought up a great point, and I'm going to send this over to you, Nola, in talking about the social justice platform that a lot of the WNBA players have been taking on a lot of attention has been brought to it this year, obviously because of George Floyd and Jacob Blake and Breonna Taylor, and obviously the list goes on and on. But the WNBA has been very vocal about social justice issues for many years, going way back. And so I want to send this over to you, Nola. Talk to us about the WNBA social justice platform and why it's so important for them to really voice their opinions on social justice matters, and also how they're using social media to get their voice out and allow it to really amplify in these times.
Yeah, I think already social media has proved just to be such a powerful tool when it comes to sharing knowledge, sharing information, just like you said, amplifying women's voices. I would say for the WNBA specifically and the organization that I work for, I'm in a super good position, and it's just a super good opportunity because so my boss and the head coach and general manager, he's an openly gay white man, right? And he encourages, just the other day before the George Floyd verdict released, we all hopped on a Zoom call and he encouraged the players on the team to use their voices. He gave them that, that opportunity to feel comfortable. He provided a safe space for them to feel however they felt. And you don't always get that. I know from my experiences when I played at the college and at UMass, it was like taboo to speak about how you felt on social justice issues. It was always like, oh no, don't say this, you don't want to offend these donors. Oh, don't say this, you don't want to offend someone. Whereas now, 5-6 years later, you're talking about at the highest level professionally, you have these, like I mentioned, white men encouraging and empowering Black women to use their voices. So I think that's a super unique opportunity. And I think that a lot of like organizations and general managers and head coaches are starting to get on board with that and starting to just provide a safe space for players to, be themselves and really not shying away from the, it's tough to talk about. So not really shying away from it and kind of just going and giving, like I said, these women the opportunity to share their voices and their opinions. And just another thing is we started the Connecticut Sun have an initiative that's specifically dedicated to social justice movements. And so we have a guy on our staff who's director of player development on the court, but he played in the NBA. And so he realized what the resources were in the NBA and how that in the WNBA, we kind of are lacking in those areas. So he's taken it upon himself to kind of head those resources and go and look for them and provide resources for the women to, like I said, just empower and use their voices. So it's a super unique opportunity. And it's just have people that support you. You can feel safe in expressing how you feel, especially on such touchy subjects like George Floyd and the other social justice movements. So I think the WNBA has done a great job in just, empowering these women. You got the commissioner of the WNBA who's behind everything that the women want to do. And you have the president of the Women's Basketball Association for the WNBA is a Black woman. So it's just, it's really unique and it's big time.
Yeah, I totally agree. I see time for the conversation is kind of starting to dwindle, but I do want to make sure that we get in some questions from the audience. And Nola, exactly where you left off is where one of the questions is picking up. We have a question that says, is it up to men to join the fight? Should they be the ones to carry the equality banner in order for women to bridge that gap? Or should we not expect or rely on them to join with us? And I think that question is speaking specifically to the disparities between men and women's basketball. Special, I'll kick it back over to you. What do you think? Should we encourage men to join the fight? What responsibility do they carry in this conversation?
Absolutely. It's even this year, a lot of the men, and I use the NBA for an example, are starting to wear the WNBA hoodies, kind of bringing shedding light, bringing awareness. I know that LeBron, tweeted something about Air McDonald, from Arizona. I think that, again, awareness and investment, promotion, all of those things help. But I definitely think the NBA, if they use their platform and use their voices, I think it'll trickle down because now, women's basketball is being talked about on more than just one platform. Not only the women are talking about it, now men are talking about it. And that's bringing awareness and attention to those that are oblivious to what's going on in our world.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree with you. I happen to be wearing the WNBA hoodie right now. And, last summer, it got a lot of attention. Everyone was wearing the orange hoodie. That became like a hashtag and it was a big thing. And it's interesting because the orange hoodie phenomenon began with former basketball player Kobe Bryant, the late Kobe Bryant, when he began attending WNBA games, and he was wearing the orange hoodie, and he was bringing his daughter Gianna Bryant to the games. And just in Kobe Bryant attending the games and wearing the hoodie, the viewership and the interest surrounding WNBA just completely jumped. So it's completely vital for men to be a part of this fight in order to get the equality really moving in terms of women's sports, on all levels, not just professional, but, when it comes to, college, high school, everything. Let's see, there are more questions. All right, so one of the viewers said, I love basketball, but I don't believe I want to play all of my life. What are some careers that involve the game outside of being on the court? I'll let anyone kind of hop in who wants to answer that one.
I'll answer, that's fine. Oh, Special, where you gonna go? You could go. Okay, I would just say there's tons of opportunities. It depends if you want to get into the marketing side, you want to get into the coaching side, the athletic training side. There's so many different avenues to still be a part of the game rather than physically playing. So I would say you got like the academic advisors who work with the team. It all really depends on like what your major is, but typically everything is still relevant to the game in some way, shape, or form. So I guess if you want to ask a more specific question regarding like whatever your major is, and then I can kind of brainstorm off of that. But those are just a few that popped in my mind. But yeah, it's a lot. If you love social media, you got social media content creators for teams now. You got it's tons of stuff.
Special, did you want to chime in too?
Nola just hit it right on the head. I was going to use social media, definitely. I know a couple of positions right now on Hoop Dirt, on Women's Hoop Dirt, that just talked about a content creator. I know Cal had one. I think I want to say Winthrop. There's a couple places that's looking for content creator, people that's going to promote and kind of just shed light on their programs.
Absolutely, I agree. Someone said that I should speak about myself as well. I am actively in a career where, I am not a basketball player, but I do work in NBA TV. I am creating content, like Special was saying. I produce the WNBA weekly show. There are a number of opportunities. If you want to stay close to the game, there are a number of opportunities involving production, working behind the camera, working in front of the camera that you can pursue. A lot of them also mention things like marketing and there's plenty of things that you can do. If you want to be more specific about something that you're specifically interested in, definitely drop it in the comments, but there are a multitude of opportunities that you can pursue within to stay attached to basketball, but not actually play the game. Another question from the audience: women's professional tennis has been able to successfully address the financial disparities that once existed primarily due to sports spokeswomanship of Billie Jean King, who is the identified spokeswoman for the WNBA, and to what extent is that voice being heard? I'll kind of address that a little bit, and if anyone wants to chime in, by all means do so. I don't think that there is one specific identified spokeswoman for the WNBA. I think what the WNBA does extremely well is that they create a platform that kind of speaks across the league, and they all support that platform. Just like any other league, yes, there are superstars within the league, but when it comes to creating initiatives and different platforms and ideas that they really want to champion, they really do come together as an entire league and make it a part of their initiatives throughout the different teams and throughout the individual players' personal foundations and things of that nature. Nola, would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. There's strength in numbers, and that's really what the WNBA takes pride in. It really is one big family that's all pushing towards the same common goal. And so there's tons of there's not one spokesperson, but there's tons of journalists and just coaches, everybody who kind of take the lead on trying to bring awareness and address those disparities. So yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It's not just one person. That's the best thing about the WNBA, is that it's everybody pushing for the same thing. Coaches, players, GMs, commissioner, everyone included.
Yeah, and it
Awesome.
seems like it's a movement that's going to have to be made. You know, it's like a whole movement for women's professional basketball. You know, like you said, you have to include the men in the NBA. And I'm gonna tell you something. When the WNBA came out, this league for women, professional women in the United States, I thought it was a sanction of the men's NBA. When I saw the WNBA, I thought they had, you know, as far as financially, I thought they were basically sponsoring and, you know, investing into the WNBA. That was my thought, you know. I had no idea you guys were on your own. I thought that the NBA was a part of the WNBA.
No, it
thought.
is. It is. The
The-
NBA is a part of the WNBA.
Correct. The WNBA is a part of the NBA. It's the same umbrella.
So I'm trying to understand the disparity, you see? If it's a part, then
Investments.
yeah, and I can understand why they can't. It seems like it goes with the logo, you know? I'm just thinking out loud.
No, I think you're exactly right. And I think that speaks to exactly what we're talking about here. How can the WNBA be part of the NBA and such, you know, inequities exist? And, you know, these are the kind of conversations that hopefully will facilitate moving things into, you know, a different direction and creating a change, even within the professional league. So no, that's a very valid statement for sure. Let's see, before we run out of time here, see if we can get some more questions from the viewers in. Let's see. Any words of wisdom for a player who is feeling a little bit discouraged?
Yeah, so I'll answer that one. I would just say, kind of just speaking from my experience too, just personally, I didn't have the best career. I didn't score a lot, do the things that I kind of wanted to do or be the player that I wanted to be, but I always, I worked as hard as I could. And I knew I was doing the things that would put me in the right positions, although it never came to fruition. I still sleep peacefully, and I have a very deep sense of peace in knowing that I kind of left it all out there and let the chips fall where they may. So I would just say it's kind of put your head down, keep working, and then just let the chips fall where they may. Don't get too caught up in the numbers game. I know that's what a lot of people do, but the numbers don't at all reflect I say this humbly, the impact that I had as a player. So yeah, I would just, you know, keep at it. I know discouragement, it comes, but as long as you're working as hard as you can and you're doing everything that's in your control, once your career ends, you'll still have a sense of peace and knowing that you left it all out there and you did things the right way.
And I'll add to that, and I'll say that a lot of times I think people get too wrapped up in comparing themselves to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
You have to understand that your journey is going to look different than someone else's journey. You know, I want to be the best coach ever, right? And I'll say Dawn Staley again. I'll use her again. Even when I was at the collegiate level, the way that I became a collegiate coach was not the same way that Dawn Staley became a collegiate coach. You know, there's a lot of coaches that have that success. Dawn Staley and Kim Mulkey don't have the same role, but they both won a championship. You see what I'm saying? Your route may be different. It may even take longer, but you just have to stay true to you. You can't compare yourself left and right. You, like Nola just said, your rear view got to be, you got to be looking at you. So, comparisons are killers. Just work, focus on you, worry about you. And as long as you know that you're giving 100% effort, that's all that matters.
And Special, I'll stay with you for one of the questions that we have from the audience. I'm just going to tweak it a little bit because you're right. You shouldn't compare your journey to someone else's journey. Your road is specific to you. So one of the questions is concerning your players, and they ask, how are your players today different than the generation of players that you played with? And so I'll just tweak it a little bit so that you can speak specifically to the game. How is the game for your players today different than the game was for your generation of players that you played with? And then do they believe in their game, and do they expect to be better than we did?
I think that so that's like I love to be transparent. I think that these kids in this generation they have this sense of entitlement. So that's the first thing. Very different than when I played. When I played, I feel like we didn't have all the things that are had now. You know, we were sponsored by Nike and we had all the bells and whistles. But you know, nowadays with social media and everything, and you see what other teams are doing, you see this team got 6 bags, 7 bags, 8 bags, these shoes, that shoes. You know, kids come with this sense of entitlement. And I think that sometimes they need a nudge or a kick in the butt or a humbling to let them know that you're not entitled to anything. Because past the collegiate level, when you get to the pro level, guess what? There's 12 teams, 12 spots. You know, like I was waived because there wasn't enough space in the WNBA. I played professionally in Europe because there just wasn't enough space. Do I know that I was better than a lot of people? Absolutely. I could tell you a couple camps I was in, I was cooking veterans, like cooking them, transparent. I was dog. So, you know, like that's just, they have to, that entitlement factor. But I do think that, you know, obviously anybody that's coaching or that's a pioneer, you know, I'm sure Ms. Roberta is, you know, one thing she would love to see is another young lady's jersey hang in the gym next to hers. You know, when I go back to Xavier, our Elite 8 banner, you know, that's hanging up. I would love for a team, you know, for Xavier to get back to that level in which a team goes further than what we did when I was at Xavier. So my expectations for my kids now is what we did this year was great, phenomenal. Pat yourselves on the back, but the year is over. Moving forward, you know, how do we get better? And so my expectations is for us to get better every year. So yeah, the grind don't stop. You have to get better. As a coach, I evaluate myself. I watch games. I look at, you know, timeouts and things like that. Like, yo, I should have called a timeout here. I blew it here. I didn't call this. I could have did that. You know, I'm always trying to get better. And so I'm making sure that my kids understand that. You know, I have the #2 player in the country, you know, on my team, Janai Barker, who is going to be a pro. She's a pro right now, in my opinion. But she has to understand that you can't be stagnant. You can't, because you're #2 in the country and all that. Like, you go to college, everybody was the woman on the high school team. You know, that's one thing people need to realize. If you're in high school, if you're in college, even when you go to the pros, when you were in college, everybody in college was probably the best on their team when they, you know, now as a pro. But guess what? I tell people all the time, you know, there's always somebody, I'm doing better than a lot of people and a lot of people are doing better than me. So at the end of the day, I'm always in the same position. So I just focus on me, and I tell my kids to focus on them. Individually get better. How do you individually get better to help the team?
Can I just say something to piggyback off what you said, Miss Coach, who has the #2 player? The game of basketball doesn't change. And I take my hat off to you young coaches. The game of basketball doesn't change, but what changes is the distraction. It's the distraction that you guys have to deal with today to keep them focused. So, and that's a lot. So I truly take my hat off to you. I do. You got a lot to work with to keep that focus because there's so much distraction out there today. Yes.
Absolutely. Let's try to get in a few more questions. We have one question that says, how can we give back to inner city, I'm guessing inner city athletes who can't afford AAU? I guess Special as a coach, when you're, I guess, recruiting some of your student athletes, or I don't know what level of recruiting you might be doing, but how can the general community members support athletes that are within their communities who are affiliated with an organized league such as AAU?
High school teams, your high school, leagues, different things like that. I'm a firm believer in, if you're good, they'll find you. I don't care if you were on Pluto. If you can play, I'm gonna find you. And so, again, I tell people all the time, make sure, when you're talking about being seen, make sure you get good before you get seen. Because I think what a lot of people do is they're so pressed on getting seen that they send out film of them not being good. And once I have perspective, once I have a perception of you in that moment, it's either yay or nay. And so I think that, high school, if you can't afford, you don't have to play AAU. I have kids on my team, international kids on my team, who are being recruited by everybody in the country who does not play AAU. So if you're good, they're going to find you.
And Special, while I still have you, I see a question that I skipped over. And anyone else who played overseas, definitely feel free to chime in. But specifically for you, Special, what led to your decision to play overseas? And as a Black woman, did you experience any hardships while there? And would you recommend it to young players? So it's a lot there.
Yeah, politics. Like I said, politics of the league, understanding that sometimes it comes down to a veteran who's been there, and whoever, the CEO and things like that of that team is, president of that team. It boils down to that. Europe, absolutely. I recommend it. I mean, we talked about the WNBA salary and 70 grand. I was making $13,000 a month, and so I would say go ahead and do it. If it's in you, if basketball is in you, and you're not ready to hang it up, and yeah, Europe is an excellent opportunity. The hardship would have been the culture shock. You're going overseas. I tell people all the time, it's a little bit different. And when vacation is cool, 7 days, 14 days, whatever, 2 weeks. But when you're living somewhere different from 9 to 10 months at a time. When I lived in Helsinki, very hard. They spoke Finnish. It was dark. It was cold. The teams were super spread out. So just a different scenario. But Germany was different because it was super Americanized. A lot of people, everybody speak English. It was a little easier to navigate. But if you have an opportunity, do it. I would do it.
What about you, Nola? Any insight in overseas basketball?
Yeah, so I wanted to play overseas. I kind of still kick myself about this. I kind of gave up on it too quick. And I kind of got into coaching. But I still get to play now, so that kind of fills that little void. But yeah, I would say definitely anytime you get the opportunity to go somewhere else, you get the opportunity to play the game you love and get paid to do it, it's like a no-brainer for me. And then just from the culture aspect, when I graduated from the College of Charleston, I went and I lived in Ecuador for 3 months, and I volunteered at a childcare orphanage. And that culture shock alone was just like, Special talked about it already, just perspective. Like, it gives you such a different perspective on life, and it kind of just opens your eyes to just like the bigger picture, and how like the things that we think are, the end of the world, you're talking about third world countries where people don't have anything. So I think anytime you get an opportunity to go live somewhere else, you open up an opportunity for yourself to learn about yourself and to get to know you. You in a different environment than you're used to being in. So I always encourage getting out of your comfort zone. I think it's important. So yeah, going overseas, if you have the opportunity, please take advantage of it.
100%. Let's see, another question that we have is, what would you suggest we do to increase participation in school spirit for all of our women's teams as they do with our men's? And I'm just going to broaden out that question and just say, across the board, what can anyone do to increase participation and enthusiasm for women's sports, whether it's NCAA women's or WNBA women? What can we do to increase participation and enthusiasm surrounding the sports? I'll kick that off with saying, one tangible thing that you can do is request to see more WNBA games, more NCAA women's games on TV. If you're following sports on, ESPN or any kind of app, make sure you're getting the notifications for those teams. Make sure you're following their social media sites, getting to know the players, getting to know the teams, buying their paraphernalia, any kind of merch, because once people see it out in the culture more and more, then the enthusiasm and the excitement for it continues to grow. So anytime you see it on TV, watch the games on TV. Those kind of things, those create metrics that people can actually follow and then start to put money behind it and dollars behind it. So that's definitely a way that you can increase participation. Nola, I see you nodding your head. What would you like to add on to that?
Yeah, I would just say just talking about it alone does so much for the game. You saw during the NCAA tournament, you saw how much it was being talked about on social media and just how much that how much of a direct impact that had on viewership alone. I think it hit an all-time high this year. So I would just say, if you're talking about tangible steps right now, the WNBA season's coming up. Play. So yeah, just talk about it on social media, watch the games, like you said, get the notifications, buy the league pass. I think it's like $14 for 6 months. So to me, it's more than worth it. So yeah, little things like that make a great deal of difference. So I would just say talking about it is the biggest thing.
Yeah. What about you, Special?
Nola hit it on the head. Y'all, this generation always got them phones handy, screenshot it, take videos of it, take pictures of it. When I'm watching a game, when I'm watching a WNBA game, boom, I'm snapping it, throwing it up on Twitter, throwing it up. Yo, look, this was going on. So just as much attention you can bring to it, that's what's going to build it up.
Okay.
What about you, Miss Roberta?
You know what? I tell you, I wasn't watching a lot of the WNBA, but I am a big NBA fan, and I think that's just the mentality of a lot of people now. And you're right, we have to kind of invest more in the WNBA. And I will now, and I thank you ladies for sharing that with me. I had a conversation with a young man that was very interesting. And he said that, when you are a young boy and you're on the court as a 7 or 9 year old, your whole thought is, I'm going to play. I want to be in the NBA. I want to be an NBA player. And I think it starts back to the youth in the high school when young ladies can say, oh, I want to be like Nola. I want to be like Lisa Leslie. I think we have to pass that baton back down to the youth in the high school so they can be aware of that, the league exists and it really needs more participation. So, yeah, with me, I'm starting with myself, I got to get to know more of the players now because I can tell you all the players in the NBA. So I'm going to get to know more of the players. Absolutely.
I think that's an excellent point to kind of end on it. Whatever we do to change the disparities within women's sports, ultimately we can give all the suggestions to different schools and what they should do better, and corporations do better, and organizations do better, but it has to start with ourselves. And once we start to change on an individual level, we can then begin to affect change on a larger level. I do want to thank everyone for participating in this panel tonight. It was so insightful, so informative, a very, very interesting and engaging conversation that I had with all of you ladies. So I do thank you for joining me for this opportunity. And I am going to pass it off to Dr. Butler so she can give us her final thoughts and thank yous. So thank you on behalf of the panel, Dr. Butler, for putting this together.
Thank you. You are an awesome host, moderator.
That's awesome. Right. Thank you, Miss Roberta. I was going to say, I'm just here watching. I really appreciate I want to just say I'm deeply appreciative of Nola, Special, Miss Roberta, and Quan for this conversation. It's perfect timing as we're really just kind of thinking about what we can do to change ourselves and doing our own kind of work. So I want to say thank you all for that. And thank you all for this dynamic conversation. I also appreciate that it's intergenerational. And I appreciate the fact of saying that we all need to come together to really support. And so my hope is that, when COVID ends and we get the chance to return to some of our athletics, that people on the call, that you'll see us in the stands, you'll see us tuning in, really trying to bring our young people to campus. I'm hoping that athletics hears me out there. I'd like to see those kinds of opportunities, just so that people have the opportunity to engage. And so for us here at Avery, to everyone out there who attended and to our dynamic panelists, I want to say thank you. I also want to say thank you to Courtney Hicks and Darren Calhoun, who are behind the scenes, keeping our audio and visual going, and all the Avery staff who are also on the call as well. Big shout out also to athletics. So I want to thank you all so much. And I hope that y'all have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.